and I started going through a
Hey,
little bit.
good day, everybody. This is Paul with the Sell a House Wholesale Real Estate Investing number 159. I got to switch my books here. Funny thing, we do two hangouts here for two different businesses that we operate, and somewhere along the way, I don't know, about 10 or 15 episodes ago, I suddenly started crossing my books because I always keep notes of what we have here. So in case, I need to go back and see what's going on or whatnot. And all of a sudden, my my real estate notes ended up in the other book, and another one ended up in my real estate notes, and so I had to switch them back today. Crazy thing. I don't know how that happened actually, but I don't know. Weird. But anyway, this is Wisdom Wednesday, September 2nd, 2015. And I want to welcome everybody here. I want to apologize for the fact that we weren't here on New Op Day. I was traveling, and John had a prior commitment that he was unable to host the New Op Day Hangout for you. So, here we are. We're picking it up on Wednesday, and you know what? Sorry about that, but, correct and continue. So here we go, and good day to you, John.
Good day, sir. Happy rising, everybody. It's funny you say that, Paul, because you know what I've just decided to do is now, because what we talk about on our other hangout, which is a network marketing training, because Paul and I are also a network marketing business, but with the exception of Wednesday, which in our network marketing training is what we call our website Wednesday, where we actually go over the product that me and Paul are involved with, is we pretty much kind of talk about the same things.
Yeah.
Business systems and personal development. And as you guys know, it's unfortunately we missed New Op Day. So for all of those that have been watching, you had 2 extra days to complete the homework for the book that we're going to be talking about every New Op Day, the How to Win Friends and Influence People.
2 extra days, you actually have a whole extra session.
Yeah. We'll probably reference this book continuously throughout, I'd say, our lives, because that's how important it is. But I've actually gone to, one notebook, Paul, that kind of encompasses my real estate hangouts, my Swiss Gold Global, and my mornings with Jeff Fagan, which is another little mastermind session that Paul and I do. And if you want to be part of that, with an even perhaps greater mentor, if you will, if I'm Luke Skywalker, Jeff Fagan is Master Yoda. So we get to do a hangout with it's kind of like a hangout. It's a live conference call with him on New Op every day of the week, actually at 7 a.m. Message us so you can be involved with that, because this guy's fantastic. He certainly changed our lives, and we always reference him. But I've just decided that, I have 2 notebooks right now. One is my notes from our hangouts, and I think it's important for everyone to take notes. And my other notebook is basically my personal journals, which is something I wanted to talk about last Friday, Freedom Friday, but I wasn't here. And then I was showing you guys, and this is my favorite right here, my daily to-dos. I was talking about this last Monday. Point I'm trying to make here is that you come up with a little system for taking notes, ideas, daily conversations. If somebody, you always have a pen and a little pad ready to take notes, jot down quotes, little quips of inspiration, especially ideas that pop into your head. Don't let them just be fleeting ideas that come in and then go away. And that's kind of like my opening point for the day, is how important it is to take notes, because it is Wisdom Wednesday, and that's a little piece of wisdom that most successful people are in the habit of always taking notes, and taking good notes, and then reviewing those notes. So there's kind of my opening thought for the day. So welcome, everybody. I don't know if you've noticed, but Paul's in a new background, not quite as aesthetically beautiful as the one you were in last session, but he's back in Phoenix, which I'm personally excited about.
But one that might be familiar to folks, exactly. That is the map of Phoenix on the wall there, and yes, this is back at the The Desert
Cell
Homestead.
The
Huh?
Cell House, Arizona headquarters.
Similar, something like that, yeah. And I've had interesting story about this place actually. When I first came down here, I actually stayed in a motel for about a month, 3 weeks, while I was figuring out what I was going to do here and coming across the fact that wholesaling is going to be it, and changing my mind from doing a fix and flip and packing it all up and heading home and taking all the tools and everything and coming back with just nothing but me and some cash and a dream of wholesaling. And when I came back, I went on Craigslist and I found, because there was no way I was going to do a motel room, too expensive. And so I went on Craigslist and I found a place for rent, and it was a room share deal, and it was this little condo right here. And I stayed with that guy for the 4.5 months or whatever that I was here. When I moved out, he moved out. But he sort of stays in control and sort of manages this for the owner who lives in Iowa. And so when I went back for the paving season for the 6 months and then came back, I called him up because he had actually moved into a large house, 4 or 5 bedroom house or something like that. And I was actually going to hit him up to see if he still had an empty room that I could rent. But at the time, when we both left, somebody else moved in and rented this place. And just before I called him up and said that, that person had moved out. And and he said, well, no, I don't, but the condo's available. And I'm like, I'll take it. And so I've been here actually pretty much ever since that day, solidly myself. I've had some roommates who have been paying for me about 75–80% of the rent share. So it's been very economical. It's been a very, very good place for me. And we have a funny story about where John's living actually too. Another interesting little, property place. That one actually is a deal that we did, and been very, very beneficial for John as well too, and economical in the same respect. And so, but my most recent roommate just left, and I think I'm going to go flying solo now because you know what? I don't need somebody to cover 80% of the rent, and it's just more comfortable. I can do my work in peace. I don't have to worry about, if somebody else wants to be watching a TV show that is just going to freaking totally distract my mind, and I can't think about, what it is that I need to think about, or, any of that kind of crap. So, yeah, very interesting stuff. A nice little progression there in the life of this little, like you said, Sell a House, Arizona headquarters.
I got to say, it's interesting. Speaking of deal, the place that I'm moving at is actually a deal that Paul and I did. It was actually, I believe, our third deal that we ever did, which came off of it came off a letter, and we got it through probate. Yes, it came off of a letter sent through probate. Third deal that we ever done. Unfortunately, at the time, we made some very costly mistakes in its resale after the acquisition, and learned a lot about reselling properties once you have them under contract. We'll get into that in a minute, because Paul and I are full of to-dos and what not to do's. And you know what's more costly? Knowing what not to do. Or
no, that's more beneficial.
Yeah, that's it. What's more costly is not what's good. Yeah, he's right. I have a thought that I'm trying to get out, but basically is when you go out there on your own and you don't know what they're doing, those mistakes are very costly. And when you know what not to do, that's more beneficial really than someone telling you what to do, is just knowing what not to do. So, with that being said, it turned out to be a very good position for me economically. I went through some changes about almost 2 years ago at this point. My goodness, my God, how the time flies. Because all of my little personal things that were going on about 2 years ago, which led me to living in a deal that we did. We had sold this to another investor. I say, unfortunately, Paul and I, this was only the third deal we had done. We were still kind of part-time part-timers at this, trying to learn how to find deals consistently. And we, at the price we acquired this property at, in the condition that it was in, because literally it was move-in ready. I mean, this is, with the exception of a paint job, this property is exactly how it was in December of 2012 when we contracted it. It's the same place. And we sold it to another investor for a very meager assignment fee. And what we learned is that if you are in control of an occupied property, now there's certain ways that you got to write your contract. Disclosure is your best friend, and people being aware of what you're doing. Paul and I legally were in a position where we could have placed a sign in front of the house. Had we placed the sign in front of the house, which when we sold it to the investor, we put about $500 worth of rehab into this place, literally. Some paint, minor repairs like switch plate covers and a cleanup. Turn around for this person, put a for rent sign, not even a for sale sign, I don't believe, in the yard. Because she wanted
it wasn't for sale, because originally she wanted to just flip it, but then she just, her mind flipped so much, she ended up keeping it.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep, which I think in this case was a good idea for her, because it's a great cash flow, and the money she's made off this in the last 3 years, and I'm getting a great deal on my rent, by the way, so I'm glad we sold it to her. But me and Paul, literally within 1 day, 2 days of putting that for sale sign, we sold it for 32. It was the same property because after she decided to keep it is when we put the $500 in, if I'm not mistaken. We had an offer for $45,000. We had left $13,000 on the table by not knowing how to properly market a property. Look at that, $13,000 mistake. And now we know what not to do, and that's, we know what to do. Put a sign in the yard. Put a sign in the yard. If it's okay with your seller or the place is occupied, and if they're located out of state, get yourself an agent who understands wholesaling, the meaning and definition of equitable interest, and get your properties listed on the MLS if you can. We've got a great agent right now who understands that he's not marketing a property for us. He's marketing our equitable interest in a property. And because you have control through your contract, or this is something interesting, Paul, that I learned 2 weeks ago by sitting with a new title agent. In order for an option contract to be truly valid, you need to actually have your option contract recorded at the county recorder. So go out, if you get your option, pay the $50, record it, and list that property. And if at any time during the life of that option, if they go around you and you have a recorded option, you know what the awesome thing is? The title company that's closing that transaction will see that, complete the sale, and you will get your option. You will get all the equity of your option. So that means if I contract an option at $30,000 and I record it, and the person goes around and decides to sell for $50,000, guess who gets $20,000? Me, because of my recorded option. And the power behind this is, if somebody decides not to close on their option with you and it's unrecorded, you can't sue them. Different than a purchase contract.
Right, because it's not, there's nothing binding to that option. Even if you make it an exclusive, there's still nothing binding to that option. The only thing the exclusivity does is basically sort of gives them the impression that they can't go do anything, that you have, the sole ability to close on that option and to put it into play and to put it into action until it expires. But in reality, like you said, they can go do anything they freaking want. An option contract has absolutely no validity whatsoever unless you do record it.
Right. And then when you open escrow on an option, you at that time, you've got to then convert your option to a purchase agreement. And if you're in a position where you got this option because you want to market this property, you're not sure, it's maybe not something that you're going to definitely want to close on yourself, if you're not in a position to close on properties and you don't know what you're doing and you're unsure about the sales price, you should actually get an option and avoid a contract. There's serious legal ramifications for you if you continually do not close on purchase agreements. However, if you're in that position and you get your option, you go down and you pay $10 to the person for the option. Literally, you should be putting, according to the lady I talked to, a $10 option. You should be giving that person a $10 bill. It's gone. Go down, you record it. So for $60, you've invested in a stock pretty much on that property. And that's the cost of going down and recording the option, and then go out, market it. And then if you decide you don't want to close on the property, the option expires, you are at no risk whatsoever for not closing on that property. The option is the obligation of the seller to sell you the property, but as the buyer, you are not obligated to exercise your options.
No, because I mean, it's right there in the title. It's an option. It's your option to perform or to not perform. You have the option. It's completely your call. And it's right there in the contract, in the title of it, in and of itself says that you are of absolutely no obligation whatsoever, cannot be held liable for any reason, anything, unless you do damage to the property or something like that, but that's another story. But you are totally free and clear of any potential liability whatsoever if you have an option and you don't perform on it. It means absolutely nothing against you because it is an option. It's giving you an option to either buy or to not buy.
Yep, it's an option to purchase real property. In fact, maybe we should title our option contracts that. Option to purchase real property. Obligation to sell, option to buy. So, those are very important things because, too, it would also, if we can't get a wholesale price on a deal, but the person has a number that we look at and we go, if we were marketing to the retail public and we had 90 days, this would be still a damn good price to have an option on this property at, because if I can sell it for, if I want a wholesale deal, I got to get it at 80. These people want 95. And if I can reach the retail public and sell it on the MLS for 115 after all my costs, I net somewhere around 106, 107, and I got my option at 95, I could still make $10,000, $11,000. I don't want to contract it because it's not a wholesale price and it'll be difficult to sell it to an investor, and I myself wouldn't close on it because of the risk, but I'll risk $50 to go ahead and slap a $10 bill in someone's hand and a $50 recording and have that property listed and then let the agents do the work. It's just like playing the stock market when you do options. It's very similar to what options are in the stock market, and I think it's kind of a powerful tool here that, because of some of the leads that we are now working with and finding, it just makes sense for us to go for the option on a lot of these properties because they don't have a whole lot of equity, but there is a margin for sale through the traditional real estate channels. Boom, lock it up under option, record that thing, find yourself an agent that will market your property. And that, because a lot of agents, I'm not saying they're dumb, two different words, ignorant, are so ignorant of real estate law and all the abilities that we have to make money in this business. That's why I say you want to get started in real estate, start by wholesaling. And if you want to work with retail and you want to go show houses, I would still say start with wholesaling because you don't need a license to do what we're doing. You're going to get a deeper insight into the market. And then when you do become an agent, you'll be one of those agents that have wisdom and not complete ignorance.
You'll be an agent who actually uses this piece of meat between your ears and puts out a little creativity and offers options to your sellers instead of just, hey, we can list it for X amount of dollars and try to sell it for full market value. Well, great. Thank you very much. I don't care about that. I need it sold immediately. I don't care how, whatever. if you're an agent who has the ability to know some different avenues of selling, there's more than one way to sell a house. There's more than one way to skin a cat. And you know what? There's probably just as many ways to skin a cat as there is to sell a house. There's so many different things you can do. You can let a house, you can let a loan be assumed. You can sell a house subject to. You can sell it on seller financing. You can sell it on, for full market value. You can sell it on specific terms. You can sell it on an agreement for sale or a land contract. There's a number of different ways to sell a house. And you walk into any real estate agent and you ask a real estate agent, say, yeah, I don't want to sell my house for full market value. I want to do something a little bit different. What can we do? And they'd be like, what do you mean you don't want to sell it for full market value? You want to do something else? That's how you sell houses. What's wrong with you? Who are you? Are you from an alien from another world? But seriously, if you're the kind of agent who has that ability, people will look you up because, once the word gets out that you have the creativity to do something different, there's a lot of reasons, more so now than ever before, why people might need to sell their house in a different way, and why the traditional method of just listing it for full market value and trying to sell it does not work for a lot of people. And that's one of the reasons why wholesaling exists, because we bring those options to people and give them the opportunity to do something different that they can't otherwise, do.
Exactly. That's it in a nutshell, is that, we're afforded the ability and the opportunity to be creative, but so are agents. Agents can be just as creative. However, they get stuck in the traditional sales mindset, and a lot of them are just so ignorant of what we're doing.
Well, a lot of it has to do, John, a lot of it has to do too with the brokerage houses, because they're just like everything else, everything's going corporate and whatnot, and they're so big and they're so afraid of any kind of liabilities that they're taking all, potential risk out of anything, and anything that's different, that strays from the norm, has a little bit more potential risk. And that's one of the reasons why too, it's the big brokerage houses are also forcing that out.
Yeah. And a lot of, brokers, in order to become a broker, you become an agent. So if you're an ignorant agent, you become an ignorant broker. It's the bottom line to it. Another little interesting thing. Shoot, I just totally lost the thought. We were talking about ignoramuses. Oh, yeah, an interesting.
It's just like if you're an ignorant poor person and you hit the lottery, you're an ignorant rich person. Nothing changes.
And what do they say? Like 90% of lottery winners are broke again in 5 years of winning the lottery. Yeah. How does someone piss away millions of dollars? Man, if I won the lottery, watch out, Donald Trump, because I'm on your heels.
An interesting statistic kind of about that is I was looking at something, I think I might have brought this up before, something about billionaires. And one of the things that they mentioned in there was, they were talking about how, I think this was a couple of years old. It might have been, I think it was actually, I don't think it was the statistics for 2014. It was the statistics for 2013. But 155 new billionaires had been added to the list in 2013. And of those 155, most of them got their start by, inheriting or somehow acquiring a large portion of their money. And from there, they, added their entrepreneurial efforts to grow that money from whatever, large sum it was, $500,000 or whatever million, 500 million, who knows what, but grow that into, the billionaire status. Most of them. So very, very few of the, once you get to the billionaire stage, are truly, self-made. There's a lot of self-made millionaires out there, people who started with nothing and get into millionaire status, but those who actually, carry that forth into the next level of billionaire status is very few.
Not surprising. The statistic I was trying to think about before that slipped my mind when we were discussing agents is The statistic is something like 98% of real estate sales are done by 2% of the agents, and 2% of real estate sales in any market are done by 98% of the agents. Think about what that means. That means 98% of the people out there aren't really dedicated to being super successful at this business. And that goes right along too with, Paul and I, we talked about Jeff Fagan maybe on this hangout. Yes, I get them mixed up. And our 2% club here in Phoenix, which comes from the Napoleon Hill book, Think and Grow Rich. And Earl Nightingale uses the number 5 and says 5%, but really only about 2 to 5% of people are truly successful monetarily in their lives and are able to put it all into balance. I don't know why that is, but that's actually, that statistic, that 2% to 5% is interesting because it seems to run across and transcend all the different boundaries and professions. Think about any organization or corporation. The 2% at the top are the most successful, making all the money, and the rest are just kind of mindlessly going through the motions to collect a steady paycheck at the end of the week with really no chances of future or any potential for growth in their lives.
The 2 to 5% you're talking about not only transcends all arenas and all fields of endeavor, it also transcends time. It's been that way throughout history. It never changes. Where do you want to be? Do you want to be in the 98% or do you want to be in the 2 to 5%? Well, guess what? If you want to be in the 2 to 5%, you're going to do something different because the other saying goes that, you're an insane person if you continue to do the same thing over and over and over again and expect to see a different result. And you are doing the same thing over and over and over again in your life. And if you're expecting a different result out of that, and like I talked about on the last hangout, 3 years is not a long time, but in today's world, 3 years can make a huge difference in your life because time is moving faster, technology is moving faster, information abounds. You can get, you can make things happen in a much shorter period of time than you could even just 10, 15 years ago. And for you to look back right now on your life 3 years ago, I guarantee you, it might feel better, but in reality, on paper, after you factor in inflation and the higher cost of everything, you're probably worse off than you were 3 years ago. But best case scenario, you're pretty much exactly the freaking damn same that you were 3 years ago. And if you go back 3 years before that, and 3 years before that, and 3 years before that, and 3 years before that, I'll guarantee you the pattern repeats and repeats and repeats. And if you look forward, what's going to happen? It's going to repeat. So unless you start doing something now, guess what? You can look back 3 years from now and you're going to see the same thing. Just the same, if not worse, due to inflation.
Yeah. I would agree with that, Paul. Well, do you have any final thoughts you want to throw in before we close this out today?
This is an interesting statistic. I just want to throw this out there because you know what? One of the things that people are all today, thinking that the economy is great and everything's getting better and all that, right? And we talked about here before on different hangouts how the deficit, the governmental deficit, why interest rates can't go up because we're at what, 17 trillion? I don't know if it's probably 18 trillion now. Who knows? But that we can't afford to pay the interest payment on our own debt. And if we raise interest rates, we'll bankrupt ourselves. So, it's impossible to do that. But the thing is, people think about, oh, well, it's 17 trillion. That's a lot of money. But do you have a clue what a trillion is? Does anybody out there have a clue what a trillion is? Do you have a clue what a trillion is? What it feels like, John?
No. And the national debt I just looked up is 18.3 trillion, and it'll be at 18.4 trillion according to the growth by the end of today.
Okay, let's put a trillion into a perspective that you can get a feel on. Seconds, all right? 1 million seconds. You can get a feel for a million, right? You can put a hand on a million and feel what that is, okay? So 1 million seconds equals approximately 11 and a half days. All right, that's quite a lot of seconds there for 11 and a half days. A billion seconds, right, equals approximately 32 years. That's a huge jump just from a million to a billion, which is why you can see why I was talking about why so few self-made millionaires ever reach billionaire status, and most of them start out with a huge chunk that they get, they have somewhere to begin. But a trillion is ridiculous. A trillion is the equivalent of 32,000 years. That's freaking ridiculous. 11 and a half days for a million, 32 years for a billion, 32,000 years for a trillion seconds. Does that put a perspective on what a freaking trillion is and why we can't pay our debt?
No, it's an impossibility. You know, how does a government make money? Through taxes. That's their revenue. Well, the yearly revenue of the U.S. government is $3.1 trillion. So it's collecting $3.1 trillion a year. 1.5 of that comes from income tax. Another $1 million comes from payroll tax. And only 300, this is something that surprised me to see this statistic. $327 billion of the tax revenue comes from corporate tax. With the billions and billions and trillions of dollars made by corporations, it seems out of sync, if you will, with what is collected from the people's personal incomes. But I digress. That's a conversation, a different conversation. But our tax revenue yearly is 3.1, but our spending is $3.6 trillion. So that means the U.S. government, just to continue to operate, it's borrowing $500 or $500 billion per year, and that deficit grows daily. And right now, the U.S. government being by 18.3. Some statistics, have this thing hitting 25 trillion in the next 4 years. What's the deficit going to look like when we're borrowing money to pay the low interest on that? Right now, the deficit, so think about that for a minute. And you know what?
That's why they're trying to get rid of currency, so they can go to all electronic money, so that we can go to negative interest, so we can still afford that payment. So that
Right.
you actually have to pay to have your money stored in a place where you can use it.
Yeah. You know what's funny? What's another interesting thing to point out is that there's $576 trillion in circulation. That's credits. That's like leverage on derivatives in the derivatives markets, credits, and currency. There's about $576 trillion kind of circulating its way through our market. With that being said, I just want to create, can you think of a business or an idea that you could just capture 0.01% of that number? That's all you need.
Oh, hey, maybe it's propertynoodling@gmail.com.
Maybe. I just got to do that number. Does my calculator do that?
I don't think you can put that many zeros into it. It does not compute. So anyway, what does all this money talk have to do with wholesale real estate? Well, wholesale real estate, I mean, aren't you coming here to make some money and to change your life and to build some wealth? Well, along with building some wealth, you should also be building some education about money, period, and knowing what's going on in and around the world that you live in, so that you are making proper decisions and doing the right things with the money that you start making from wholesale real estate. And you just don't go out there and flip a house and make $10,000 and go buy a new car and put another freaking liability on your docket instead of putting some assets into your pocket. You know what I mean? So I'm just talking about the whole idea of, just financial education as a whole, being part of your sort of personal development, self-development aspects of your life, that if you really want to make a difference in your life, you know, wholesale real estate ain't going to do it for you all by itself if you yourself don't put some effort into, you know, gaining some new knowledge and doing the right things with the money. Otherwise, you're going to be just like the lottery winner. You know, you're going to get that, you're going to flip that house, you're going to make 10 grand, you're going to go out and spend it. You're going to be stuck into the, you know, irreversible cycle of consumerism, and you just go spend it, and you end up, you know, 2-3 years down the road. And what has your wholesale business been for you? And not a wealth building machine, but a freaking job. All you've done is made some money and go out and spend it. That's what you do on your job. It's the same thing, you know. So we're talking about, you know, using this as a platform for not just an employment change or a job change, or we're talking about a lifestyle change here. And that's what, you know, really is the ticket to the future, is for the people who are looking for, you know, something different in their life that's going to last. It's more than just, you know, increasing your income.
Yes. You know, speaking of these numbers, I find this stuff so fascinating, and it's hard to put such large numbers into context. But the U.S., you know, we talked about the U.S. national debt being about $8.35 trillion. Do you know what what would you guess the total amount of personal debt exists in the United States of America?
What, you mean the average personal debt per person?
Or
the
total personal debt of the citizens of the United States.
I believe isn't it equal to, or at least half of the deficit?
Yes, it's actually $17 trillion.
Yeah.
And the majority of that, 13.5 trillion of that, is mortgage debt.
Right.
Mortgage debt, which means in America, you really don't own shit. Everything is borrowed. And you know what? It's time to, I think, my final thought for the day is this. We're living on borrowed money. We're living on borrowed time. And you need to figure out how to create your own economy, your own wealth, get yourself out of bad debt, because debt is not a bad thing. And there's a difference between leveraging debt properly and having good debt on your balance sheet as opposed to bad debt. And you know what? There's not one person in this country, not one person in this government, or one banker that is going to turn the tide. We live in a debt-based society. That's just the way it is. Bottom line, you could be out there with the Tea Party conservatives protesting taxation, protesting government spending. But guess what? It's a waste of time to do all that, because they're not going to cut taxes, because they can't. They're not going to stop borrowing money, because quite frankly, if you understand how our monetary system works, they can't stop that either. Eventually, the chickens come home to roost. This whole thing has the potential for a really catastrophic collapse. So where do you want to be when that happens? I think the only power that we have is to go out to recreate ourselves, go out there and capture a fraction of that $576 trillion that's available, capture a portion of that, secure your own wealth, secure your own future, secure your own family, get out there and make some differences in your life. And, you know, I think protesting and bitching about the government and the spending, and you can disagree with the way it's done, but guess what? That's the way it is, folks. And I don't think it's going to change. In fact, I know it's not going to. So, you know, why swim upstream? Why swim against the waves? Learn how money really works. Learn how this economy really works, and capture your piece of the pie.
Let's see, 30,000. 1, 2, 3, 4. 56, 57, 60, 57, 60.
Doing numbers.
$57 million was the number you were looking for. 0.001%.
Oh, yes.
I just figured out how to figure that out. So yeah, if you catch, like you said, 0.001% of the 57 trillion that's out, 570 trillion or whatever the hell that number was you said, that's out there, that's $57 million. I think you'd be all right. Yeah, I think you'd do okay. And with that, oh universe, I ask not for more riches except for approximately $57 million. But more wisdom to make better use of the riches given to me at birth, consisting of the power to control and direct my own mind to whatever end I might desire, which is to have a new lifestyle and change the world and have $57 million. So with that, give a call, propertynoodlers@gmail.com, and we will, you can hop on this train that we're taking down the road to $57 million.